guys, this is Atlas Scout at it again, and we are back at the Christiansborg Castle, popularly known as the Osu Castle, formerly the presidential seat of the President of Ghana. Yo, my G, what should I expect today?
If you want fun, excitement, and education, stay tuned. We've already told you, don't blink, else you might miss a moment. Join me as we give you a tour and a documentary about this iconic place in Ghana.
I mentioned we have 12 dungeons in the castle, right? This is one of the dungeons, and then that's another one. Okay, so these were male slave dungeons. They kept male slaves in here. Between 50 to 60 of them kept in here. 50 to 60 kept here. So 100 to 120 slaves will be in these two dungeons all the time. Once you are brought in here, you do all your activities in here. This will serve as your living room, as your bedroom, your playground, your dining hall, and your lavatory as well. The window over here, this is what supplied the slaves with air. There is an opening at the top. The hole over here, that is what provided them with sunlight. I believe you know back then there was no electricity. So this was their only source of light at the time. We have covered it now because anytime it rains, rain enters the dungeons. That's why it's covered now. Back then, it was left open so that anytime the sun comes, it will give them a bit of light. Then when you look at the side over here, you can see there is a channel or a gutter over there. Can you see it? That is what they used as their latrine or went to their toilet. Diseases were quite common amongst them. A lot of them died as a result. If at any point in time, any of the slaves died in any of the dungeons, they were not even buried. The days to tie a cannonball to your leg. They will put you on a boat, they will move the boat a few meters away from the shore, then they will dump the dead bodies into the sea. Once you're a slave and you are brought in here, you'll be here for 3 to 6 months. That's how long it took the ship to move from the Virgin Islands to get to the shores to take the next batch of slaves. So once you are here, you would have to be here waiting for the ship the whole time. Within that 3 to 6 months, slaves are fed once each day. Just once. They are never allowed to take their bath as well. All the dungeons are built the same. You come across one door, one window, one source of light, and one latrine. Now, after Ghana gained independence, this castle became what we call the seat of government. Back then, between 1957 and 2013, this castle was the seat of government. 12 presidents and military rulers were here. Okay. Now, during that time, some of the dungeons became storage rooms. This is one of the dungeons that later on became a storage room. And that's why it looks a little different to this one, okay? But then it used to be as empty as this very one as well. So male slaves were kept in here. We have other dungeons that were reserved for female slaves. 12 dungeons in total.
This room has a rule. Only royals are allowed to use this particular room. And so far, the room has been occupied by just 2 people. Only 2 people have used this room. They are both royals. The first person to use the room was the late Queen Elizabeth II in 1961. So when she visited, this is where she stayed the whole time. Even though most of the things here have been replaced over time, some of the things here are still the same or are still original. The tables at the sides over here, can you see? Yes. The lamps on top, the bed frame, this one, not this one, the bed frame, this one, and then the wardrobe over there are all original. It's been here since 1961. The second time this room was used was 16 years after the Queen left. In 1977, the Queen's son, Prince Charles, now King Charles, became the second person to occupy this room. He was invited to Achimota Secondary School's 50th anniversary. When he came, he chose to use the same room as his mom. In the entire history of the castle, these two royals are the only people to have occupied the space. All right, so this is the office of the late Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, popularly known as J.J. Rawlings. Rawlings was here from 1981. He spent 11 years as a military ruler, and then he spent 8 more years as an elected president from 1992. He was here for a total of 19 years, okay? 19 years. He's actually one of the very few presidents that lived in the castle. He actually lived here for 19 years, from 1981 to 1992, his first 11 years as military ruler. Then from 1992, 8 more years as an elected president. This was his office. Before this became his office, it used to be the office for governors. The governor that built this block, and this is the 1921 block, the one that I pointed out to you in the middle of the 50 cedi note. The block was built by Sir Gordon Gorgesburg. This was his office. He was the first governor to occupy this office, and then the last one was Sir Lord Listow. After independence, Rawlings used this as his office. He chose this over another office in the new castle. When you look through the window, you can see there is an office at the top over there. Can you see it? The office at the top over there. That is the office that the other presidents used. Rawlings chose this office because he didn't want to be overthrown. Now he felt once he was here, he could see everything that was happening around him in the castle. Right from the comfort of his seat, he could see all the activities taking place at the first entrance, the second one, and even beyond it. So before people looking to overthrow him will be able to get anywhere close, he will quickly run downstairs. He will enter into his helicopter, which was always in the garden. Now, since he was a flight lieutenant, he will fly the helicopter out of here by himself to get himself safe as well. Rawlings is half Scottish and half Ghanaian. His dad from Scotland and his mom a Ghanaian from the Volta region. He died 2020 during the COVID era. So that same 2020, his mom also passed on. Coincidentally, just about 3 weeks ago, his wife also died as well. So this is the St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church. This church was added when the Portuguese took over the castle. The Portuguese were here for 4 years. They were here between 1679 and 1683. When they took over, since they are known to be Catholics, they needed a place to worship, and that's why they built this particular church. They named it after one of their Catholic priests. This church, ironically, is built on top of dungeons. Whilst the slaves were down there suffering, the Portuguese will be here praying to God. Surprisingly, there is a familiar theme in all the castles that we have in Ghana. When you go to Elmina Castle, built by these same Portuguese, you'd find a church on top of dungeons. You go to the Cape Coast Castle, the British did the same thing. Church of England, also known as Anglican Church, is built on top of a dungeon there too. Now, this same room gave birth to the Presbyterian Church of Ghana. On 18th December 1828, 4 Basel missionaries came in from Switzerland and used this same space. Within a period of 3 years, all 4 of them died. Later, another set of 3 were sent to come and continue. Again, 2 out of the 3 died. They died of malaria. One was taken to Ebri to go and see a herbalist. He was treated using neem tree. I believe you know neem tree. Now, neem tree, by the way, was imported from India. After the missionary was treated and became fit, he decided not to come back to the castle, but to remain in Ebri to continue his missionary work. And that's how come in Ghana, if you want a place where you can find a lot of Presbyterian churches, schools, hospitals, when you go to Ebri, Ekropon, and its surrounding areas, that's where you find majority of these products. But this is where it started in 1828. Behind me is the only Ghanaian who served as governor in this particular castle. From 1661, when the castle was built, till now, it's been 364 years. Just one Ghanaian managed to become governor, and that's Asimini from Akwamufie. Akwamufie is around Akosombo. Okay. Before he became governor, he was a prince. His uncle was a chief at the time. Now, they were wondering what the Danes were doing in the castle. They were always seeing people being brought into the castle, but then the same people were not going back out. So they were curious. His uncle sent him into the castle as a spy. I believe you know who a spy is. Before he came, he had to learn the Danish language to be able to gain employment in the castle as a cook. Whilst he was employed and discharging his duties as a cook, he was spying on the activities of the Danes in the castle and looking out for the loopholes. Now, he noticed one very big loophole, that anytime traders arrived in the castle to buy guns, the Danes, as part of their tradition, would give the guns to the traders for them to try before they sell to them. So he went back to his village and told his uncle. They gathered 80 of their strongest men. Asimini led the 80 men into the castle where they pretended to be traders. They told the Danes they wanted to buy guns from them. They were giving the guns to try. As soon as the Danes gave the guns to Asimini and the 80 men for them to try, they used those same guns to kill the Danes, and then they took control over the castle in 1693. One of the Danes managed to escape, and that was the Danish governor. He escaped by jumping the wall right behind the castle into the sea. Even though he got injured, he managed to swim all the way to Asher Fort. It was the Dutch that were stationed at Asher Fort that took the Danish governor in, treated him, and later took him to Denmark to report to their king that a Ghanaian and his men had conquered and taken control over their castle. So after the Danish governor left, that was when he put on the Danish governor's gown and then declared himself governor. He didn't rule for long, sadly. A year and 2 months later, in 1694, the Danes came back. Surprisingly, they didn't come to fight. They came to convince him, to persuade him to sell the castle back to them. He agreed and sold the castle back to the Danes for 50 marks of gold. Before leaving the castle, he locked up the whole place and took the original set of keys to his hometown. Till date, the original set of keys to the castle still remains in his hometown. The Akwamufie Museum, that's where you find the original set of keys to the castle. Selling the castle back to the Danes is not the sad part of the whole story. The sad part of the whole story is that even though he's Ghanaian, during his time as governor in the castle, he actually continued the slave trade as well. I know you're tired. We have one last place to visit before we end the tour, and that's the door of no return. As we have in all the castles in Ghana, when you go to Elmina Castle, there is a door of no return. Cape Coast Castle, there is a door of no return. The exit that we just used, we call this the door of no return because once you are a slave and they bring you out, you cannot go back again. This is where you lose every trace of your identity. Your name, your language, your family, everything has to be left behind over here. You are going to be taken to a new country. You are going to be given a new name, new family, a new master as well. Whenever the ship arrives, the ship will be about 300 meters away from shore. So because of how shallow the shoreline is, the ship couldn't come all the way to the shore. So it will be about 300 meters away. They will match slaves from the dungeons. The spiral stairs that we used, I believe you saw it, that's where they count the slaves. So they have designed it so narrow so that just one slave could move at a time to make the counting very easy for them. They move them through the door of no return. They use small boats to convey the slaves to the ship. then the ship would take the slaves away to the Virgin Islands. As I mentioned earlier, according to the records, over 126,000 slaves were taken from this castle alone to work on sugarcane plantations in the Virgin Islands. The slave trade continued until 1803, when Denmark became the first European country to abolish the slave trade.